You are listening to Dear Texas Radio, where we encourage Texans to drop everything and read. Your host for today is B. Allen Bourgeois.
And welcome to Dear Texas Radio. We are happy that you've joined us for this evening's show. We do encourage everybody to drop something and read, but for those who have heard me before, just don't break it. We don't want you to break anything, but we do want you to pick up a great book by a Texas author. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a good story. It may take you into the world of the Civil War or out in outer space or even under the thousands of pounds and tons and crud of the universe. But you never know where you're going to end up. But to help guide you with that, that's what the show's all about. And I have with me Ian McLean. Welcome, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
It's a pleasure. So you've read a book, and we're going to get into more detail about it in a moment. But I want to touch back on who you are. You are a coach, a high school coach, and a middle school athlete. What did you coach?
I've coached for 27 years in Fort Bend and Alief in the Houston area. I grew up in the Waco area, but I've coached football, I've coached baseball, I've coached basketball, track. I teach PE, I teach health, and I even teach driver's ed. So I've done a lot. I've taught a lot of people and a lot of kids over the years and coached a lot of really wonderful people who've turned into doctors, lawyers, police officers, and I've had several players that have gone on to the NFL and Major League Baseball and even in the NBA. So it's been a very enjoyable career teaching all these people and having these wonderful athletes to work with, and I've enjoyed it and had a great time being a teacher and a coach.
So how did a coach become an author?
That's a good question, and I get asked that a lot. When I was a kid growing up, I had a grandpa that used to tell me all these crazy, wild stories about his grandfather. And, of course, I thought they were just too outrageous to even believe half of them. And then one day he showed me a picture of him with Wyatt Earp, and I started going, wow, some of these old stories Grandpa told me there might be some traction to them. And I've always kind of wanted to tell these stories, but, I went on to high school, and I went on to play at Sam Houston State University, and I played football there. And like a lot of athletes that are washed up, the NFL doesn't want you, so I became a high school coach, and I've enjoyed doing that since I've been coaching, all 27 years. So it's been a wild turnabout of events. But I've always had this story, and I just really didn't have time to tell the story. And one day I sat around and I said, you know what, I got to start writing down some of Grandpa's old stories. And as I started writing them out and researching them, I just found more and more stuff. And I'm like, I've really got to go ahead and start writing this down and putting this in a book. So I started writing stuff and doing some things, and started joining the Houston Writers Guild and just got around other writers and just started enjoying it more and more. And then as I progressed through my writing, I decided, hey, let me try to enter a contest. And I entered a couple contests and did good, had a lot of comments. And then finally one time I was one of the finalists in the Houston Writers Guild's contest. And I said, I can write a little bit. So I started finishing the story and just working on the story. And as I progressed, I got to the point where, you know what, let me go ahead and see if I can't find an agent. Let me see if I can't find a publisher. And that's kind of that's kind of how I got around to doing it and becoming a writer. It just kind of slowly evolved into it.
Sounds more like it's definitely a slow migration. I mean, the research of what you've been doing in itself takes a lot. But in your bio, it says you excelled as a storyteller at Sam Houston University. What did that actually mean? Were you somebody who just sat around a campfire and loved telling stories, or was there something more than that?
I have always been somebody that likes to tell stories. So I'm a great storyteller. to be a good writer, you can't. That's not just something you just all of a sudden do. I mean, when I was in high school, I can remember I had high school teachers that say, hey, you're a good writer. But, you know, when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and even into my college, I wasn't going to be a writer. I was going to play for the Dallas Cowboys and be the next hero. I didn't think I'd ever be a writer. I just kind of evolved into it, and it was work, and it just became work. And this book that I've written is become a series. The Legend of Shane McLean is a series. But when I first started, it was going to be one book, and that one book became 2 books, and then it became 3 books, and now it's about 4 books. So it just kind of grew, and it's been a decade for me to actually finally get it into publication and get it to where I want it. Being a coach, it's very hard for me to sit back and be happy with it. I'd read it, I'd write it, I'd be finished with it, and then 6 months later I'd go back and look at it and go, this is terrible, and just tear it all up and go back again and again. And that's kind of the process that I used. It just took forever. But I enjoyed it, but it was very hard. It was not something easy.
Okay. So we're going to get into the other the other book that you have, the series. But let's go back and let's really get people hooked into what the story is about that starts everything. It's called The Legend of Shane McLean, and it starts pretty much right about the Civil War. So give me a synopsis. Help me understand what this has to do with the Texas Rangers.
When Shane was born in the Waco area in McLean County, and he was just your regular farm boy, just lived out on the farm and grew up, and his dad was real quiet and always kept to himself, and he thought his dad was kind of just a regular guy. And then he went on to Waco one time with his dad and wanted to join a shooting contest. Well, his dad was what's called a Freemason, which is the secret society, and they're very good people. But it's a secret society, and he wanted to know more about it. So he went to Waco with his dad, and while he was there, they were attacked by a gang of outlaws, and he watched his dad shoot and kill a couple of these guys that were attacking him. He got himself into a little trouble, and all of a sudden he realized, whoa, my dad isn't this quiet little innocent guy. And as things started to unfold, he realized his dad was not only a Freemason, he was part of what's called the Illuminati. And I know a lot of people nowadays come back, they don't realize what the Illuminati is. It's a secret sect of a very secret society, and it's not talked about a lot because it is a secret society. But Ben Franklin and Sam Houston and several very important people in our history were part of this secret society or this Illuminati. And he realized not only was his dad an Illuminati, his father Kirby was a Freemason and a Illuminati henchman. And that would mean that he's the guy that they would send out if somebody had loose lips or would talk a little bit too much. They would send his father. And as things progressed, his father kind of knew too much and kind of fell out of favor with this sect of Illuminati. And that's about the time when Sam Houston hired a death squad from Fort Leavenworth to come murder his father in Austin. And they kill him and murder him right in front of Shane, beat Shane to within an inch of his life, and he vows vengeance. And that's basically what the story is. The next 50 years, he goes and tries to hunt down these people who wronged his family, and he gets himself involved into a very secret society and a lot of things that go on. And I tell those stories. And these are stories that aren't really out there. These are family stories that my grandpa told me. And my grandpa was a grand master of his lodge out in Chula Vista, California. And just hearing him tell these stories when I was growing up, I was like, wow, I've got to write this stuff down. I've got to tell these stories. And that's kind of what I've done. And I have to be very careful to be able to say what I can say and what I cannot say, because it is a secret society, and these are good people. But I don't want to upset people as well.
Well, that brings in an interesting question, because the Illuminati and the Masonries, I mean, so many people, it goes both ways. So many people don't believe they're real, and some people really, really, really believe they're real. So I can't see how you would be in danger of writing stories about them, especially that far back.
Well,
so yeah,
you would
seem
think
to
that,
have
but
some
I've also,
concern there.
Yeah, I do. I've had some people contact me and tell me I don't need to share these stories. My own father told me he would prefer me not to share these stories. I think I talk about how I moved around a lot as a kid. And there's a lot of different reasons why we moved around a lot as a kid, but I was told I was not to be a part of certain things and to avoid them. And that's kind of what this story is, and that's kind of why I want to share this story and get these things out. Because people believe or don't believe, the fact is Freemasons are a great organization. They do a lot for people, but there's a history with the Freemasons in my family that goes back over 100 years. And as for the Illuminati, they absolutely existed. And Andrew Jackson, president, we have presidents that were Illuminati, and Sam Houston, and a lot of these other people were. But again, it's not something that was talked about. But if you do some research and you look into things, you'll find out that a lot of this country was founded upon their beliefs and their principles. And I kind of go into a little bit of that, but again, I have to be careful about whose toes I step on when I do this. But I do want to share it because I do think it's a story, and I do think it's worth telling. And, you know, it's a personal story to me personally, because my family, and I write about this, and it's on my website, but these people actually showed up to my grandfather's house in Colorado when he was 6 years old. They pulled his father out of the family and murdered him in front of the family. And it dates back to this rivalry that started in 1860. And that's why this is personal for me, and that's why some of these stories, I feel like I want to get them out there and I want to tell them and tell this story. I think it's a neat story. I think the readers will absolutely love it. I think if you like history, you will love this story, because it's full of history, and it's not full of the history you hear about in the books. It's full of the history that you hear about passed through a family, and that's basically what this is. It's a family legend passed on to me by my grandfather when I was 18. It's not something that was talked about within our family. It was only shared with adult males for a lot of the time, and I enjoy telling it, and I enjoy telling the story, and I can't wait to share the rest of the story in the series that I'm writing.
And with that, we're going to stop right there, because we will talk more about the series in a moment, but we need to take a break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Critics say that Joe Kilgore's A Farmhouse in the Rain has an almost Shakespearean feel and appeals to the human spirit on every level. You can pick up a copy of Joe Kilgore's Farmhouse in the Rain as an ebook or as paperback. You can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or at books.txauthors.com. Don't forget to get your copy of Joe Kilgore's A Farmhouse in the Rain.
Dear Texas would like to thank our sponsors.
Are you looking for a book festival in your area? Check out the Book Festival Network, where you can find local Texas book festivals, plus information about the attending authors, their books, and even videos. The website is easy to remember. It's bookfestival.network. Don't forget to spell out network. Again, that's bookfestival.network, your home for Texas book festivals and Texas authors. Read, connect, and discover. We have it all at Wimberley Village Library. We support our community by providing high-quality books in all formats. We have programs for all ages and many services to fill your needs. Check us out online at WimberleyLibrary.org.
Bourgeois Media and Consulting, a book publishing consultant where creative inspiration is realized. More at bourgeoismedia.com. EBG 247, where you can find ebooks galore 24 hours, 7 days a week at ebg247.com. Lone Star Book Festival is an exciting book festival to discover indie authors and publishers. To learn more about the award-winning authors, events, and other exciting events happening during the Lone Star Book Festival, please visit our website at lonestarbookfest.com. The third annual short story contest begins March 1st and runs through July 31st. Enter your short story for a chance at prizes and getting published. To learn more about this annual event, please visit our website at txshorts.com. McKinney, Texas's quaint downtown square, rich in history, entices visitors to discover its more than 100 eclectic shops and eateries. With origins dating back to 1848, McKinney is situated just 30 miles north of Dallas and 40 miles south of the Oklahoma border. One of the country's fastest-growing cities, McKinney maintains its authentic small-town atmosphere, which is palpable when exploring the downtown streets, taking a walk on one of the city's many nature trails, or even visiting the city's Croatian-style village. Learn more about what awaits you in this picturesque North Texas city at www.visitmckinney.com or call 888-649-8499. You are listening to Dear Texas Radio, where we encourage Texans to drop everything and read. Your host for today is B. Allen Bourgeois.
And welcome back to Dear Texas. We do encourage you to drop everything and read. And to help you with that, I am talking to Mr. McLean, who is talking about his series of books. The first one that is currently out is called Legend of Shane McLean. And if you listen to the first half of the show, you can hear how passionate Mr. McLean is about sharing the stories of family folklore. And earlier he had mentioned he's now up to 4 books in the series. Is that correct, Ian?
Eventually it will be 4 books, yes. The first book is the one that begins in Texas, Waco, and the Austin area, and following the murder of his father, he joins the Harrison Rangers and the Terry's Texas Rangers, which is the Texas 8th Cavalry, and he goes off to fight in the Civil War. And that's what the first book, Quest for Vengeance, when he leaves home and tries to hunt down these people that murdered his father, and he ends up with his friends. They think it's going to be fun. They go off to join the Civil War and fight, and they'll be home by Christmas. I mean, the war was going to last 4 to 6 months, maybe at the most, because the Yankees were going to quit and be defeated rather quickly. So it wasn't going to last long, and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah. So this is where he actually becomes not only a man, but he really starts setting himself for the future as an avenger, as someone who's going to revenge the death of his father. Is that correct?
Yes, and it shows you all the things that he did and how quickly he amassed his ability to be a crack shot and a pistolier and all these other things that he went on and became. He had he was very angry at a young age and wanted vengeance. And then as he goes on to war and he sees all the death and killing, he realizes, hey, this isn't for me. There's nothing but fields of dead. He's at Shiloh and he could just walk across the bodies. There's so many. And he's like, hey, I just want to go back home to my sweetheart, to my Shamrock Ranch in McLean County. But no matter what he does, things happen and he gets pulled back in. And that's basically what it is, his fight for trying to get home, battling, does he want to go home to his peaceful life with his mother and marry his sweetheart, or does he want to hunt down these people that murdered his father? It's just a long process that he has to go through, and I think it's just a fun story. It's a very fun story and very educational into history.
You've got him going in, setting the story basically in the first book. So what happens in the second book?
Well, at the end of the first book, he's down in the bottom of a grave, digging graves, mass graves, following the Battle of Shiloh, and somebody plays a joke on him, and he accidentally stabs somebody, and he has to leave because they're going to hang him. and he ends up leaving with some of his friends. He gets caught, and as he's captured, he's taken to another unit and shipped back out east. And while he's out back east, he ends up fighting in two more major, the second one's called Curse of the Gun, and during Curse of the Gun, he ends up fighting in two more major battles along with Shiloh. He fights at the Battle of Antietam and the Battle of Perryville, where he's left for dead on the battlefield. And all this while, he has the sweetheart back at home who his friends are telling him the father married her off, and the family didn't like him and didn't like his father. So he's battling with that, and then he ends up with the love interest of a beautiful belle at a ball, the Sabres and Roses Ball in Urbana, Maryland. He meets a moonshiner's daughter after he's attacked by a bear in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. And then after he's left for dead on the battlefield in Perryville, a beautiful Shaker nurse resuscitates him, nurses him back to health, and then helps him escape to rejoin his unit of Terry's Texas Rangers.
All right. This man has quite an adventure going on in all the books. You had mentioned earlier that you did some research. So how much of this is really accurate historical aspect, and how much of it's just folklore?
Absolutely. I love that question. My grandpa would swear it's all true. But, these are his stories, and I wrote his stories down, and what I didn't know, then I told the story as I thought he would. He was my grandpa, so I'm going to make him as cool as I can. Basically, the whole legend, the whole family legend, is inspired by these stories that my grandpa told me. I would say everything in this book is absolutely historically accurate. Did it happen exactly the way I say? Probably not, because I made him out to be a cool, great guy. He's my grandpa, my great-great-grandfather, so I wanted to make him as cool as I could. And that's what I think I've done. I don't know exactly. Maybe he killed 3 people. Maybe he killed 5 people. Maybe there was Yankees before we started during the war. So, I mean, he had to kill or be killed during the Civil War, and that's why I have so much fun telling this story.
So it really comes back to your time in Sam Houston University, where you became a good storyteller.
Absolutely. And you know what? Everything in here, I've had Civil War historians look at this. I've had lots of Civil War people who love the Civil War read it, and they absolutely love it. And I wanted to make sure that it was historically accurate as possible. I don't like reading garbage. I don't like reading things that don't have any merit or truth with it. Everything I wrote is historically accurate as possible. Is it exactly? No, I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what happened. But I do have his stories, and I tell the stories the way I thought things would pan out. That would be a fun read for everybody, and you learn a lot of history. So everything in the book is historically accurate as I can possibly make it. I've done my best to do that because I wanted to be true to the reader.
All right. When is your second book due out?
Right now, I'm finishing up the second book, so I'm hopefully late next year the second book will be coming out. And it's going to pick up right where this first one lets off. The first one is full of information, and basically the first book sets up the next 3 books. And the first book is action-packed, page-turner, and the next 3 are absolutely that way. And it's full, like I said, of history that you don't normally read about in history books. But it's all there if you'll just find it and look for it. You know, after the war, my grandpa robbed banks and trains with Jesse James and hung out in the saloons with Wyatt Earp. And everybody's like, oh, that didn't happen. And I didn't believe these stories. And then I saw a picture of Frank McLean sitting right next to Wyatt Earp. And everybody in this picture, Bat Masterson, all these famous outlaws and lawmen that are in this picture, it's called the Dodge City Peace Commission. It's on my website. And all this is posted up there, and everybody's known about except for one person. And that's what is so true to the story is Frank McLean. He's sitting right next to Wyatt Earp. But no one knows much about Frank McLean. And that's because, again, he was part of a very secret society. And I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that he was part of this secret society, and he did a lot of things where he would be a lot like his father, who was a henchman for what's called the Illuminati. He did a lot of that same thing. And it does come back later on when his father and his son are both murdered by this same group of people. And that's kind of what the story is about. And I talk about that in the preface of my first book, Quest for Vengeance, Legend of Shane McLean, Quest for Vengeance.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left, so real quickly, tell people your website, and they can reach out to you.
Okay. Everything is author Ian McLean, so www.authorianmclean.com. I got stories. I got photos of my family. I got the story of how these people showed up at my grandpa's cabin in Colorado, pulled him out of the house and murdered him. I got the gravestone, which shows where he was murdered at. I got pictures of Waco back when Shane was there. I got a picture of Frank Shane McLean right next to Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, Luke Short, Sheriff Bassett, some of the most infamous people that you see in the West. There's a picture of him, and right there with him is Frank Shane McLean, and he's the one that you probably know the least about, but you won't. If you read this book, you're going to learn a whole lot more about him.
And your books, of course, are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, books.txauthors.com. Where else can they find your books?
I think just about anywhere. You can go just about any place and ask for it, and you can get it. I think the easiest way would be the Amazon. It's reasonably priced, $13.99. I just want to get that first book out there because it's going to set up the next three. And if you read that first book, I know I'm going to have you for the next three. If you read if you just read the first couple chapters of the book, you're going to absolutely want to read more and learn more. And that's why I've got that website up so people can go look on the website and see that, hey, yes, this is inspired by my grandpa's stories, but it's also full of real people, real history, and it's a very, very fun story on top of it.
Well, I thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you have much success with your stories. And we look forward to seeing the second and third editions coming out within hopefully a year and a half.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I enjoyed it. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this story. I think it's a fun story, and I just enjoy telling it. Thank you for having me.
Well, your passion has clearly shown through, so we encourage people to go out and buy the book. Thank you, and have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Dear Texas Radio. To learn more about Dear Texas and its literacy programs, please visit their website at deartexas.info. I'm Alex Anthony, your announcer. Have a great day.